Hello, panel. Thanks for joining me.
It's a pleasure to
Good to
be
be
here.
here.
Uh, I got this crazy thought. Let's talk about Monday night's federal election. And let us pause to send our best wishes to our friend Gary Keller, who lost on the late returns after coming on strong in Nipissing Temiskaming. It was so close. Anyway. Um, Allison, what are we to make of these results? You go first.
Oh, okay, lucky me. I mean, a couple of things. I think that I think that it's encouraging that Canada saw what polarization can ultimately do, and that I think we really switched our voting behavior to be a lot more thoughtful, and a little bit less responsive to polarizing tactics and approaches. I'm actually kind of, in some ways, I mean, I know it's not the most stable for getting things done, but in some ways, I kind of like that everyone's forced to work together, if I'm being honest. Wasn't super comfortable with another 4 years on top of the 10 years of Liberal government, even though it's a different leader. I think that they still have to work a bit harder to earn that. I don't think that Poilievre really deserved it with a lot of the sloganeering and how he sort of got out of the gate. I mean, I don't think that the NDP ran a great campaign either, and it's unfortunate that that the results are so bad. But I do hope that everybody can work together and sort of reassess where we go from here.
I'm hearing people saying things like Donald Trump killed the NDP. Do you think the NDP can recover?
Um, I don't know that I agree with that. I mean, I think you saw the NDP taking this path for a while before the rate drop. I think that Donald Trump changed fortunes for everyone, but some of it was already baked in. I think if Poilievre had spent more time showing the statesman-like figure that he was at the end of the campaign, maybe a year ago, that might have been helpful. And similarly, I kind of see the Conservatives and the NDP both have fallen victim in a way to being a little bit too rigid ideologically. Their tent has been getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and that's also a choice. It means that you don't broadly appeal to as many people. It means you don't invest in trade policy, economic policy, foreign policy in the way that I guess a compellingly national party would. And so when, global events come and knock on your door, if you're already not known for carving out that space and really selling yourself as a national party, then it is easy to get relegated to a boutique party and to sort of be put as not a major contender when you're standing up to another state. So I think it was already baked in for both the Conservatives and the NDP to a certain extent, just in the way that their political behavior was moving.
Marcy,
Paul,
you've been
can I
talking.
can I can I just jump in?
Go.
Sorry, I
Yes.
just if this is maybe gives Allison a little bit of comfort, hopefully not cold comfort after I know it was a rough night for the NDP and I think as partisans we can all appreciate that there are highs, there are lows, and it was not an easy night for New Democrats. But let's not forget that my party, the Liberal Party, was written off for dead in 2011. Like there were books written on the subject, Paul,
Mhm.
you'll recall. So I think it is far too premature to predict any long-term outcome for the New Democrats. They absolutely can rally back. And quite frankly, I don't think liberals or conservatives want them to be gone. I think we do want them to continue to exist. They play a really central role, not only in the electoral space, but in Parliament.
Marcy, it looks like, for the moment, at least, it looks like the Liberals did not manage to win a majority. Is that because of any missteps? A lot of people talked about Mark Carney sort of running out of steam beginning in the week of the debates.
I think the front half of the campaign did run stronger than the back end. I don't know if that's germane to the results that we're seeing or if the reality was going to be much closer to what it is, which was that there were going to be three-way race splits across some of the most populous provinces. That's what we saw in Ontario. It's really too early to dissect exactly why those splits didn't turn for the Liberals in places like the 905. But we did expect that this was going to be riding by riding, case by case. Yes, there were very good predictions and very strong predictions that the majority was in the bag. I personally have been, and I've said this, and I know others have said this repeatedly, cautiously optimistic Liberals would form government, that the majority was a possibility, not necessarily definitive. And I think that is still the case today as we record, Paul, and things could still shift. A majority may yet happen, depending on recounts, depending on flips. If the Liberals actually end up at 170 seats, it's not unimaginable that there could be members from other parties who decide to sit with the government caucus. There are all kinds of scenarios and machinations that may yet play out. In terms of the campaign itself, I do think the last week could have been stronger. There were a lot of competing priorities going on in terms of what Mr. Carney had to deal with as PM. The reinsertion of Donald Trump was both helpful from an electoral perspective in terms of reminding voters of the core Liberal message, at the same time also distracting from a governing point of view. It's not an easy time to run a campaign and to govern. Same thing happened in Ontario. There are a lot of distractions at play. Again, it's hard for me to say definitively right now exactly why that was. But again, I don't think this is still a great day for the Liberal Party. This is a party that 6 months ago was not in the game, was probably going to end up with a result in third place, based on the polls last October, November. So the fact that they're forming government with a fourth majority, this is still a good day. And it's a strong minority. There is no debating it's a strong minority, even if it's not a majority.
Jason, it's got to suck to be the Conservatives right now. I mean, the biggest share of the popular vote since Brian Mulroney, still in opposition, and the leader lost his seat. What do we make of all of that?
Yeah, it is a tough day to be the Conservatives and a conservative. And, there's a lot of Canadians who were pretty fired up about a change and, a couple 100,000 shorter, when you in the final analysis. And there's going to be the stages of this, right? There's some grief. There's going to be some anger. There's going to be some recriminations. There's going to be some, looking at, what could have been done differently. And there's going to be a lot of head shaking and fist shaking at the NDP as well. I'm not going to lie. Paul, I was laughing as Allison was going through that, and it's a really tough day for the NDP. Marcy, I'm not so sure all the Liberals want the NDP to continue. I think most Conservatives do, but I think, maybe agree to disagree on that one. The Liberals have done a pretty good job of putting them out of business. Anyway, there's Paul, it is going to be a tough little bit going forward. And the leader losing his seat, that complicates matters for sure. What I liked about the last little bit, it reminded me, Paul, I think you covered the 99 provincial election in Ontario. And, I remember those days. I remember, Tom Long, who was the Conservative campaign manager at the time, sort of saying to me and a group of us, if this election was a couple more weeks, McGuinty might have beaten us. He sort of just kept coming and I actually found that Poilievre, there was times in the first couple of weeks where he looked like he was beaten. We all sort of know what that looks like. And then in the last 2 weeks, I didn't see that at all. And it's sort of similar to what I saw from Trudeau in 19 and 21, that sort of stiffened his back and got toughened up again and sort of went back out and faced the music. McGuinty did that in 99 in Ontario. And I knew at that point he was probably going to be premier at some point. And I thought I saw that in Trudeau the last couple of elections. It's the one thing that I did see really in the last couple of weeks of Poilievre. I think if there was a couple more weeks in this election campaign, I don't think the way the Liberals were going to like the results. I think it was just going to get better for Pierre. Not perfect in terms of the campaign, some things to look back on, but the truth is the leader actually the last 2 weeks performed really, really, really well, and it's a tough situation to lose your own seat.
After the 2019 and 2021 campaigns, the Conservative leader stuck around for a while, and I think thought they would stick around for a while. Scheer in 2019, Aaron O'Toole in 2021. Is this another what's the thing from Mad Max, the five-finger exploding death punch where you walk around for a few more steps before you realize you're dead? Is Poilievre
carrying a grenade in your pocket?
Yeah. Is Poilievre safe as Conservative leader?
I think it's the right thing for him to stay around. It's not my decision, obviously. It'll be the party's decision. It'll be his. It'll be caucus. I think the result being, I think better than people would have expected a week ago on broadly, it means that it's safer than it normally would be. But there's going to be some real hard questions about the way the last couple of years, the tone of the last couple of years. Because the truth is, the policy stuff was good. Most of it was stolen by the Liberals. Congratulations, Marcy. Carbon tax, capital gains, trade policy, resource development policy. You guys have it all now. So it wasn't the policy problem. The truth is, Polyev didn't really find his voice with those swing voter groups until the last little bit. But like when you look at this, Paul, you mentioned highest share of the popular vote since 88 and 84, and then over 40%. Like we're talking about incredible number of votes that were put together. I will say there is one thing though that we're going to have to get right, and that's threading the needle on the NDP. I joke, I make jokes about the NDP and that kind of thing. Driving them out of business over the last couple of years, sort of trying to embarrass them into calling an election had consequences. It's now clear that that had some consequences, and I don't know what the solution is there, because an election was like driving them to try to call an election was the right move, but it did have consequences. We're gonna have to be honest about that and try and figure out how that works.
Marcy.
Just one quick reply on this question of Poilievre not holding his seat. I think it's really difficult for a federal leader to hang on when they don't hold their own seat. I mean, that is the whole reason why Mr. Carney went to the election as quickly as he did, ostensibly because he understood that he could not lead a federal party from outside of the Commons. And I think, it's incredibly difficult to imagine Mr. Poilievre. He's a very effective communicator. He could probably hold a press conference every single day in the press theater and find other ways of making his voice known. But it's difficult to imagine the leader of His Majesty's Loyal Opposition leading the Conservative Party of Canada, which holds tremendous responsibility and obligation right now to hold the government to account, not being in the Commons for debate. It just doesn't square. It doesn't square for me at all. I don't see how he can hang on in this circumstance, at least not in the current incarnation. Maybe there will be some form of by-election if one of the other members steps aside and creates a space for him. But we've seen Pierre Poilievre in the Commons for 20 years. We haven't had a parliament without Pierre Poilievre in it. Suddenly, he's the leader of the opposition and he isn't there. It doesn't work.
Allison, Prime Minister comes to you and says, what do I do about this? Should I call a by-election promptly as soon as someone resigns to make way for Pierre Poilievre? And should I run a Liberal against Pierre Poilievre in that by-election? Because I'll tip my hand. I come from the days when, as a matter of courtesy, nobody ran a candidate against a party leader. But manners seem to have gotten a bit coarser since those days. So,
Yeah, I would say I can't see that generosity of spirit coming our way anytime soon. And I also how long is Poilievre going to stick around? I think it makes sense that he stays around now, especially. I mean, the argument for him sticking around is that it gives time for the shine to come off of Mark Carney, which it will. And then you can pick a leader that is the right foil for Carney, and have that bump a few months down the line instead of right now with an interim leader and moving into a leadership race. And I think the other thing is that it's pretty clear that there are divisions in that party that Poilievre was not able to manage. And those came up quite embarrassingly all through the campaign. I don't think they're gone now. I think you're still going to see, Doug Ford and Tim Houston and those that ilk of the Conservative Party, fighting and brushing up against Poilievre's leadership style and his base. And so, I mean, I don't know. I don't know that this is a long-term solution. I don't think he had conceded his seat, but when he said he was staying on, and I give it some time. We'll see where it all lands.
Jason, this Conservative Party was formed in 2003, has contested for 8 elections, has lost the last 4 in a row under 4 different leaders. Is the Conservative Party turning into the Washington team
Generals.
yeah, the Washington
Washington
Generals
Generals.
always shows up faithfully to lose to the Harlem Globetrotters?
That's right. Or whoever's playing the Savannah Bananas in baseball these days. Um, I'll say this: conservatives are very frustrated, and I mean, this is not a 4 hour long podcast, so we're not going to be talking about everything with regard to Western alienation and the various different places that we've got to figure out. I will say there. People are really sick of losing to the liberals and are really sick of losing to like this one is a little despite the fact that maybe you think that the campaign wasn't perfect, whether you're conservative or whatever. The truth is, handing sort of 4 more years or 2 more years or 3 more years over to the liberals after the last 10 years, it's really difficult. So to your point, nobody in this party wants to be the Washington Generals, and people thought they'd got their hopes up. They thought that this time it was going to be a win, and as that became clear that was a tall order over the last month, and that outside in both some internal stuff and some external stuff had made that more difficult. I think people are struggling a little bit. It's going to take some time to get over sort of how this one feels, because there was I think there was times in 2019 and 2021 where the more thoughtful people in the party didn't accept, but probably understood that maybe we didn't have the best offering, or we had a bad last week or something like that. This time, I think most people in the party, despite Poilievre's faults, and he has some as well as Carney, felt like we probably had the better offering. We definitely had the better ideas. And that between sort of NDP ineptitude and outside events, that was probably enough to take it away. So there's going to be some frustration and anger for sure.
If I can jump onto that,
Sure.
I think that the Liberals are the only one playing brokerage politics now. I think the Conservatives have really put themselves in a niche spot, and so has the NDP. I have lamented with my Conservative friends too, my Atlantic, kitchen party fun, Peter MacKay kind of Conservative friends, right? And I have always been one of the more centrist, pragmatic Northern Ontario New Democrats. And as the party base gets more prominent and the party's appeal gets smaller and smaller and more focused, I have said to my Conservative friends, I don't always see myself anymore. And it doesn't mean I'm with anyone else. It just means I don't feel like there's as much room for me as there used to be.
Yeah.
And I feel my Conservative friends say the same thing sometimes, if they're not so ideological, pure on their side. And that's a real thing, because I don't want to vote for anyone else. But am I the poster child for this NDP? Probably not. But the NDP I worked for used to fight for a lot more votes.
Yeah, I think they tried they tried to run Jack Layton's moves over the last 5 years, but they didn't. I mean, they were missing Jack Layton, to say the least.
Exactly.
Well, and the weird part for the NDP, sorry, Paul, I was just going to
Yeah.
say the weird part for the NDP is, and Allison, this is something that you would have to lament, I think, if you're a part of the NDP, is like look at the seats that the Conservatives flipped from the NDP this time. A lot of working class votes, a lot of working class seats. And to be fair, this wasn't a regular election, right? Presidentialized election. One of these two men is going to lead us. You sort of got to pick. It's not like a by-election. You don't get to sort of sit this one out, was I think the message to most Canadians, or many Canadians. But that becoming that sort of urban party and losing that sort of traditional roots of the NDP, which was a working class union party, and if you came home and you showered after work, you probably voted for the NDP or thought about it before, and now it's like the Conservative Party's probably your home, and that's not a great place for the NDP. It's a great place for the Conservatives, but not quite enough yet.
Marcy, what's the to-do list for the new Prime Minister look like? The returning Prime Minister. All the parliamentary weasels will remind me that he was the Prime Minister and he continues to be Prime Minister, but now he's got work to do. What is he going to do?
To-do list isn't short, and I would submit that the honeymoon is already over. They're right into this transition. The work plan is incredibly daunting. There are at least 3 or 4 critical issues that have to be dealt with before the summer. From where I'm sitting, first and foremost is we need resolution on the final seat count here in terms of the Commons, in terms of how this government is going to be able to govern. That really does impact the sequencing, the agenda, everything that the government is going to bring forward. So that's first and foremost. Second, the swearing in of the ministry. There was a ministry sworn in. It feels like yesterday. There is a new cabinet, but I think we can all safely assume that there will be a new cabinet with some new faces, new blood, new candidates who are emerging. I think it'll still be a very slim cabinet. Mr. Carney has set the bar now far slimmer than his predecessor. So somewhere in that space between 25 and 30 with ministers carrying multiple loads, but definitely some new faces, if not a third of them new faces, something like that, maybe a quarter to a third. That's really important, obviously, because Mr. Carney is trying to present a change and new government and all of the things that we know he's needed to do over the course of the campaign. So I would anticipate that. Critical issue 3, the government needs supply. And so you are going to have to test the confidence of the House sooner than later. That is going to entail a speech from the throne. Whether there's a budget or not remains to be seen. But there is going to have to be some form of appropriation for the government to keep operating, if not new spending out of the gate. And then the last issue, which I will wrap together, but these are both really big issues. There's the Canada-US dimension and how quickly that unfolds and what players are on the court to be the primary interlocutors with the Americans as we go forward in some kind of negotiation. I note the new US ambassador presenting his credentials today in Ottawa. That's the beginning of the next chapter of that story. And if that wasn't enough, you also have a G7 meeting coming right at us, and the G7 may not matter to some of our allies as much as it matters to Canada, but it matters a lot to Canada. And that may be when President Trump visits for the first time. We don't know. Certainly expect that Prime Minister Starmer will be there, the leaders from France, Germany, Japan, and Italy all coming to descend on the Canadian Rockies. That's in the month of June. It's like tomorrow. So Paul, long answer to your question, but the laundry list is almost endless, and it starts today. There is no honeymoon. Maybe I hope the Prime Minister had a good time last evening. He looked like he was getting his groove on or some kind of boogie down late into the late hours or early hours of this day. But you noted, I'm sure you saw he was back at 80 Wellington already today, back to work, and that's where we are. The work has already begun.
All right, I think we covered the terrain pretty efficiently there. Thanks everyone for joining us, and thanks for joining us every week through this campaign. My God, let's not do it again too soon. See you soon.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Paul. Bye.